Hi, Rick. It's so excited to have you on Why Arts podcast. And I know all the amazing things which you do, and I have been so inspired by you. But I would love to for others to listen to you and listen about all the things which you have been doing in theater and education. Please start with introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Rick Westerkamp. I am a lifelong dancer and theater maker. I was a member of a couple modern dance companies in the DC area. I performed regionally on professional stages. I was a drama teacher with Roundhouse Theater Company and a couple other companies in the area. And then I spent 10 years at an all girls independent school, specifically in the middle school, teaching drama to grades 5 through 8. I was an eighth grade dean and dean of the middle school.
Like how your journey started from somewhere and then it kind of like came into this education space. And I would love to hear more about your experience with like theater education, especially like if you have classroom stories to share, because I think that.
Drama education is all about games, stepping outside of your comfort zone, trusting an ensemble of people, learning how to collaborate. And you can smuggle so many great skills that students can use in their academic subjects, that students can use in the workplace, into the drama classroom. And while you're doing it, sometimes they don't even realize you're doing it. And then they get to the end of a project or a creative process and they're like, whoa, I learned executive functioning skills. I learned how to take a large project and break it down into manageable chunks. I learned how to give and receive feedback. And seeing that light bulb come on for them is really exciting because maybe there was a struggle along the way, but they extended the boundaries of their growth mindset to see themselves do something that maybe felt really hard a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Um, so there's that like heartwarming part of it, but the laughter that comes from everyone taking risks is so fun.
Yeah.
I've had groups of students that create full on inside jokes as a class because of a game we played, or they'll improvise a scene on stage and then that'll become the class mascot. During the pandemic, I had a group of students who created a character named Fred the Lap Chicken, and it brought them so much joy in a time where going to school and like being around people was so scary and unknown. And like 2 weeks later, a couple of them ran up to me with this little gift bag, and inside was a chicken that they named Fred from that class. And I still have that chicken in a box in my parents' basement. And when I move out of this house, Fred will come with me. And it'll be like a constant reminder that connecting and sometimes slowing down what you're doing to be really present with your students in that space is a gift. And if you slow down and take the time to know them and engage their interests and their curiosity, you can move through your curriculum later in your time together more seamlessly because they know you know them and you've learned so much about them at the outset that you can gauge how you progress through the curriculum based on who's in the room.
Wow, yes, that is so cool. And I feel like you've given like shared so many amazing, interesting points here about the creative process, about like students finding themselves, finding the connection with the teacher and with the community and forming these community together and finding their joy. And I think that is so underrated. I feel like when somebody says like joy and the creative process and also the idea of like how they figured out the executive functioning or the academic skills they learned through this process, like that is like so like exciting for me because we always like miss out on those part. And I'm curious to know like how do you think like theater like helps student like explore like identity, community, empathy, and like just like those embodied kind of expressions. And Also, like on this path, like because theater is one form of art form, I would love to hear like similarities or like differences with like art, like with theater and different art forms for you.
Yeah. Oh, so much. There's so much in that amazing question. I think going to Zaretta Hammond's Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, acknowledging who we are as people and our differences and our similarities at the outset, and then holding that in whatever the creative space is, both um, for the teacher, their identity in relationship to their students' identities, and then for the students, their identity, and then their peers' identities and their teacher's identity. If that's the foundation, then I think what we can accomplish together is vast. It's great. It's probably infinite. Um, and I used to think that theater did that inherently because I had some great experiences. And then it takes a couple experiences that are a little prickly or have a growth edge to them, and I realized we have to be intentional as people facilitating or people with power in the room to uphold the dignity of every person in that room. And when a fracture happens, to acknowledge it and to come together to look at the norms we established as a group and to intentionally welcome all parties back in and like recommit to the work and to one another. And I think right now there's a lot of division and um, like alienation and pointing out like good or bad or like putting those labels on people and their behavior. And I think theater through both devising original work and touching on plays, new plays, older plays, Shakespeare, the Greeks. We can build empathy for characters who hold opinions that maybe we don't hold. We can create understanding by finding a way into portraying those characters. And we can transfer that, or I believe that we can transfer that into our interactions with each other. And I had a professor in college when I was studying acting who said, if you are holding a judgment about the character you're playing, you're never going to perform it to the best of your ability because you're filtering it through your judgment as the person and the audience is going to see that. So it doesn't mean that if we're playing a character who might be a villain, we absolve them of everything they've done, but we want to dig in to see what about their context, what about their intersectionality, what about their circumstances make them act the way they do. And I think about that a lot as a teacher. And as I got higher up in admin, I tried to hold that for every student and encourage my colleagues to do the same because middle school is a time to make mistakes. And I used to tell my students if you're coming into my office and making the same mistake, that's a bigger issue. But if you're coming into my office and you're making a bunch of little mistakes and you're showing that you're growing from each of them, I'm down for that. I'm here to walk the journey with you, to provide feedback, to answer questions. Hopefully, we get to a more proactive than a reactive place. So I think the application of empathy and not labeling people as their actions, but digging deeper to find out the circumstances behind what motivated that action. Um, those feel like the maybe undersung skills of theater education that I think if we emphasize them in certain spaces, more places would adopt a theater curriculum or work to create their own, and then fold it into things like discipline at the school. And then that becomes a part of the culture and the community.
Wow, this is so inspiring to me because I think the whole idea of like theater being so internal and not just external is so like powerful, and like how that supports like people, like even if they, as you were saying, like the role of a villain or just like looking at yourself in somebody else's shoes is so like underrated again, but it's so difficult. Like people don't understand that, and so many like fights and issues of like society would be just solved if people understood other people's perspective. And that is like so like special, and also like how you mentioned about mistakes, and like I also would love to know, like because theater is so much about like improvisations, making mistakes, like experimentations, like and like failing in a different ways, and like kind of showing up in classrooms in different ways. Like what kind of like your experience have been with that, and like how do you maintain like this freedom, but freedom of making mistakes, but then also like making sure that there is like a structure and there's a balance which goes with it.
That's such a great question. And it's pretty much one of my favorite things about leading a theater classroom is um, especially I had been in an independent school, which has a little more freedom curricularly speaking, and uh, and then to be an arts class in an independent school, there's a little bit more freedom. Uh, and to break down the idea that there's one right answer is huge for students in that space. And to emphasize that we're going to laugh with each other, not at each other, encourages those creative risks, as well as acknowledging that if we're being equitable, a big risk for me might not be the same as a big risk for you. So we're like holding the person and we're observing what they're doing in relation to what we've seen them do so that growth can be acknowledged in all parties, not just thinking of growth as a monolith and it has to be like that big Meryl Streep Oscar winning performance. It can be like last week I said 2 lines in a scene, and this week I said 10 lines in a scene. Or last week I played a character really close to myself, and this week I'm playing a teddy bear on roller skates who's making macaroni and cheese. So I love that about it because especially in an academic day, there are students who are going to feel like they have to push the boulder up the hill like Sisyphus, but sometimes a drama class offers that relief where they're like, oh, not that they can coast, but it's a different task than maybe learning algebra or learning about the periodic table or reading a novel in English class. And then maybe they have more bandwidth for one of those classes because drama offers that lift in their school day. Um, I saw that a lot in my conferences with parents. They would, if their student was having a particularly hard quarter, they would come to my conference and I would be able to share different feedback and observations just because the nature of my class is different. So they would hear about the whole child in their whole day and they would say like thank you so much for this conference because I got to see my child through you and I got to see what I see of my child that you notice and I got to hear about parts of my child that maybe I don't see all the time. And I think it is a gift in a school curriculum and in a middle school curriculum because that's a great time to explore a lot of different things and maybe not specialize right away so that you can appreciate other interests and still work on the things that you're really confident in, because we want those adults to be future um, board of trustees members for theaters. We want them to be future audience members. We want them to be patrons of the arts. And a lot of adults will remember like, oh, I had to memorize this speech from Shakespeare in 6th grade and can still I can still memorize it, or I can still recite it, or I had to be in the fifth grade play and I was a tree, and that's why I go to the theater once a year and I bring my grandkids, or whatever that is for them. So it's not just about making the next generation of performers, but the next generation of arts appreciators.
Wow, yeah, that is so like huge. I feel like, and that's how we bring like that domino effect of like people supporting artists and like being open, like why this work matters, even though if like they're
Yeah.
not a performer, but like they can at least appreciate like why it is so important for like the whole child development as you were sharing and the executive functioning, which is so like key. I'm also curious, like because like I being like kind of a shy introverted person and it was like a journey for me. It have been like intimidating for me sometimes to like go
Yeah.
on the stages and like I'm sure like you would have those so many of the students like that and I would love to hear like how has that arc been and like how that supported you and like how did you work around that?
I used a lot of my own experience as a theater student in approaching how I teach a theater class. I started as a dancer, and so I found speaking on stage super intimidating at first. I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't trust myself, or I I don't know, any combination of those like adolescent feelings. And I found theater games really intimidating because I was a perfectionist and because I was fairly type A. So I thought if I wasn't like winning the game or succeeding, I wasn't doing the thing. So then when I started teaching theater at Roundhouse Theater Company in Maryland, I loved games because I saw all the possibility they have to, instead of isolate yourself like I did, to see that there are so many games where, in order to succeed or win, the ensemble has to do the task together. So emphasizing in games that we are working as one, or we want to get to a group think place, or we want to get into a rhythm that the whole group is feeling in order to succeed at the game, and relating that to putting on a play or a musical or a concert by an orchestra or a collaborative community artwork that tends to bring more students in versus games where there is a clear winner or a clear loser. Um, and I love to start almost anything I'm teaching with games, and then pepper in the skills that I want them to use in the art we're going to make in the games. So while we get to a point where we leave games behind and we're making art, we're still holding on to those skills that we learned in the game, like making eye contact with each other, being really present, listening to hear versus listening to respond. All of those skills that are superpowers when you're an adult, no matter what sector you're traversing, but that we can start to build those muscles in a middle school drama class.
Wow, I love like it's so like nuanced like when I'm listening to you like of like those like skills which like add up to being like a human through theater. Like I feel like even if I'm not a performer, like there are so many like skills which just help me being that better human or a better leader in the society or just like living in this world would have helped if I was in like theater classes, which is so like interesting to me. And I love the part that like your like superpower of using like theater games because I've not heard a lot of people say that, and I think that is so like special of like how do you get the group together and especially when people are feeling like for me like a person like me specifically like I would have loved if we had like more theater games and I could like go into it and then kind of experiment and like build my confidence baby steps instead of like oh go on the stage and like start performing like that is such a like a shift which you're trying to like create and scaffolding in these like theater education is so like important. And I wonder, like, what kind of challenges have you faced as a theater educator, as a performer, with like parents or like teachers or school leaders, and just like talking about like why it is so important?
That's a really good question. I think culturally, in the US, and especially in like a pocket of independent schools where parents are paying to send their child there. So there's a customer
Hmm.
service leaning. Uh, if you are looking for a rigorous curriculum, it's easy to look at my class or a drama class and say, "Where's the rigor?" They're laughing, they're having fun. I like some parents can undersell some of those skills, and I hate the term soft skills because I think soft is the wrong adjective. I think they're superpowers, and I think as Jonathan Haidt mentions in The Anxious Generation, like face to face contact and how we communicate in person is so key. And it's just going to continue to be an important skill for these kids to have as they become adults because they haven't known a time without technology in their hands that can give them every answer within seconds. So, uh, I used to find people, either administrators or colleagues or parents or sometimes students who didn't see my class as something that was worth time in the schedule or worth a grade or worth any number of things. I used to get a little prickly around that, but then I started thinking about educating a community versus only seeing my students as students. Like my colleagues were, some of them were students of what a drama class can teach, what my drama class taught, and what students got out of it, as well as their parents, as well as administrators, as well as the board of trustees of the school. And when you enter into anything with genuine curiosity, you get farther with people. So when I stopped receiving that feedback as prickly and I started thinking of it as an opportunity to bring people into what I do, I got a lot farther. And I think starting that journey of genuine curiosity and then carrying it into my time at Hugsy was part of the reason I got so much out of that year that we spent together because I feel like Hugsy does a really good job of emphasizing entering into relationships from a place of curiosity. And and I'm interested to see how to carry that forward into other work because, yes, there will be times where that is harder than I'm making it sound right now. But I think the benefit later on in that relationship you're building is so great.
Yeah, I think I also agree if we're having this like optimistic mindset because I think that is how we can like go forward instead of like every negative because there is just so many which can pull us down and which can kind of like dishearten us and like stop us from like fighting this fight for arts. But I feel like it's just like that small baby steps which we are making for every day to kind of make people see like what arts can do and like what arts education can do, which is so like interesting to me. And I'm also curious, like, what are your thoughts for especially like teachers who find like theater education intimidating or something like overwhelming, especially if they want to bring more like theater techniques like like masks or shadow puppets or like
Hmm.
tableau in their classrooms with their subjects, because I also feel it's so like valid like how we can bring theater to all academics because it really like helps in like getting students together and getting the brain power going. And I would love like how it's your like have you had experiences with this intersection and like how did your work has been with teachers in this area?
I think that the more the drama teacher or the theater teacher can be an open and game collaborator with other subject area teachers, the more you're going to get out of that connection, and the more the students are going to get out of it. When they see the skills from one class applying in another class, and they make that connection and they transfer that knowledge back and forth, it makes the learning so much deeper. And when they see their teachers collaborating together, that strengthens relationships with them with both of those teachers. So um, at the school I was at, we would have these team meetings where all of the sixth grade teachers would get together and we'd hear a little bit about what people were doing in their classes and we'd hear some struggles. And hearing about your students in other spaces, I think, allows you to make those connections and say, well, I tried this in my room and it worked. And maybe it'll work for you, or maybe as you try this technique or this approach with this student, it could work for you as well, or you'll find your own version of it. And when I would hear other teachers talk about presentations or group projects, I would just not from a place of like overconfidence or hubris. I would just share like what the structure of that looked like in my room. And then I think it demystified a little bit for other people what it could look like in their room and what they could borrow from what I was doing and what I could borrow from what they were doing. Um, and I think those are the moments that will really stand out for students. Um, I in my work, I do a lot of playwriting with students, especially their original ideas. I think like valuing the student voice in a project can't be overstated, like the power of that, and letting them know that what that I care about what they're writing and that I want to help them bring it onto the stage in like a works in progress kind of state, but it doesn't have to be like ready for Broadway or ready to be published. And I would collaborate with the different grade level English and language arts teachers so that their standards of writing in their class matched my standards of writing in my class. And if we're working on verb tenses in fifth grade, I would really emphasize that when I gave feedback on scripts in my class, and they would see that transference. Or um, they would do Greek history in fifth grade, and I would do Greek drama. So students would have the opportunity to share with me what they were learning in history class and see that it also mattered in drama class. And I think that is really beneficial for students and for teachers because it can sometimes feel as a classroom teacher like you are working in a vacuum by yourself. And that can be really intimidating. That can be really alienating. It's easy to put undue pressure on yourself when you feel like you're working in a silo, but even opening up and sharing in a meeting what you're doing with other people allows them to like a week later ask how it's going and then you can reach out to more people. And I found when I was more transparent about what was going on in my class with other people in the building or on the campus, I made less mistakes or missteps than I did when I worked in a silo and felt like I was a one man band doing it.
No, oh my God, that is so beautiful. Like how you have put it about like how also like theater being so flexible and we are so like open as artists like to collaborate and like we're always looking ways to like connect and just find a way to work together, which I do not see like maybe I'm biased, but do not see in like other academic subjects unless like they are like super open or they super understand a form of art. And that's why like it's so like good that you put in that energy to collaborate to share and then to kind of show them like how I am trying to I'm trying to kind of like support your teaching and like I would want the same from you. And I think this collaboration trust begins once we start like collaborating, which is like so beautifully like how you were sharing about it. It's so beautiful. And also like I if you have to like say like theater had like a superpower, like what would that be? If we have to like sum up like theater education, like what is a superpower of it?
I think it's two parts for me. It's relationships and like the importance of building relationships, watering those seeds, making connections that maybe don't grow right away, but in a couple years you might collaborate with that person, so it's worth it to get coffee with them when you're starting out. Because you never know, like down the line, you could work together. And a sense of collaboration with other artists who are collaborating with you on your art as an actor and a dancer. It was so important to make connections with directors, scenic designers, prop designers, costume designers, lighting designers. So many people come together to make a musical or a play happen on stage. And the more you can find the joy in each other and bring that into the work you're collaborating on, like that's going to be felt by an audience. They're going to feel that moment when a main character walks out as their confident self in act two, different than the way that they came out at the beginning of the show. They're going to feel it in that like curtain call number where everyone's doing a kick line and the audience is on their feet. Like you feel it in the product. So I think connection and collaboration and community is a superpower. And then I think risk taking, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks is my favorite metaphor. Like, because you know it's cooked if it sticks to your wall, spaghetti. So, and inviting students into that, like I toward the end of my time at my school, I would let students know like, hey, this is a new lesson we're going to try. I'm kind of excited by it. You're the first students I'm working on with it, so let me know your feedback. Let me know what you like about it, what you think could be better about it, what was hard about it. um, and and then there's a feeling of co-creation with your students, and it sort of breaks down this idea that our students are empty vessels that we need to fill with knowledge, and we honor what they bring to the room, like Frere um spoke about so astutely and openly. Yeah.
So beautiful. Like I think I love the analogy and like so beautifully like put together. A question you're currently sitting with.
I'm thinking about like what sectors or organizations or professions don't currently use the arts or borrow from artistic practices or frameworks when they're tackling adaptive challenges.
Wow, so like beautiful and very, very well put together. And lastly, why arts?
Oh, I think for me, it goes back to like all the technology in our lives. Like there's that scientist looked at how our heartbeats sync up when we share something in community, a symphony, a play, a piece of art. And I think that can't be undersold. Like, I saw a play at the Public Theater in New York where Hamilton started and the musical Suffs. It was by the director, oh, by the writer and actor Jordan E. Cooper. And in his note in the program, he said, he was basically encouraging people to turn off your technology, really engage in what you're about to see, because this collection of people in the audience may never be together again. So enjoy not only the art, but each other. And I think for me, that's why art's like the it can be great to take it in by yourself. Like sometimes you're just in the mood to like listen to an album or watch a TV show or a movie or go take yourself on a date to the MFA. And that's awesome. But even if you take yourself by yourself to the MFA, you're probably not going to be there by yourself. Like a lot of other people are going to be there. A handful, at least, of other people are going to be there. So I think the experience with other people in real life, not on our devices, I think that's why.
So, so, so beautiful. Oh my God. Like a lot of appreciation, Rick. It was so beautiful. Thank you for being on this podcast. It was so like inspiring. And I'm sure whoever listens to this podcast is gonna find it so inspiring. And like hopefully we manifest more theater education for all the kids and all the adults going forward.